Hello, everyone. I'd like to spend a few minutes with you, kind of catching up a little bit and talking about some issues that I'm seeing and talk to you a little bit about some of the topics and how they interact with one another. Um, the first thing I need to say is that as I'm reading some of the initial posts in your discussion topics, there have been some problems with some people playing a little bit fast and loose with quotations. If you are going to quote from directly from an article or a website or a book, um, you even if you cite the reference, you need to put quotation marks around the direct quotations uh, that you copy. Um, there have been some instances where people have copied many words in a row, cited it, but did not put quotation marks. You need to make sure you put quotation marks. Please also remember that the APA guidelines set up a difference between the use of 40 consecutive words and more than 40 consecutive words. 40 consecutive words, you do just what I indicated. If it's less than 40 consecutive words. If it's more than 40 consecutive words, then you have to handle it differently. You have to put it in block format, indented, uh, with no quotation marks, so that it stands out from the rest of the paragraphs that you are writing. So I've been somewhat lenient so far, but I need to start cracking down a little bit more about this APA style in plagiarism kind of issue. Um, I probably should say to those of you who don't know, this particular program, IO Psychology, uh, there are a number of professors who are much more strict than I am about following each and every somewhat minute uh, APA style format issue. I only try to flag the big issues and only subtract for the big issues. But for those of you who perhaps have only had me as a professor, I do want to alert you to the fact that next semester, if you take a class with somebody who, besides myself, yeah, you very well might encounter somebody who is very picky, shall we say, about this. So just a heads up, okay? Okay. With that out of the way, let's talk about some of these topics that we've been dealing with and will continue to deal with. The ones that I find fascinating as the way that they fit together are the topics of organizational structure. You've already read about it. You've already seen some postings that I have made on it and a document that I left for you about it. And motivation. Coming up, we're going to be talking about decision making. Um, and what else? What else do I have written down here? Yes, and even to a degree, organizational culture. So let me kind of talk to you a little bit about a very interesting phenomenon that I find. Let's talk about organizational structure. Quick review. An organization can be seen as having two dimensions, a vertical dimension and a horizontal dimension. The vertical dimension basically dictates how many layers you have in an organization, from the CEO to the lowest level of the organization. We tend to call these companies either flat organizations or tall organizations, depending upon how many levels they have. Tall organizations can have, if it's a very large company, can have 15, 20, 30 levels between the CEO and the lower levels. Flatter organizations obviously have much less, hence the term. We've also kind of been talking about, and your book kind of talks about, the latest trend is what we call delayering, in which organizations are intentionally cutting out the number of layers in their organization. In doing so, they gain some advantages. The communications up and down the hierarchy take less time, and so forth. But when you talk about the vertical dimension, not only do we talk about layers, but we're also talking about what we call span of control. Span of control is how many people a single manager has working for them. How many do they oversee? Now let's think about this a little bit. If we have an organization that is tall, it typically means that spans of control are more narrow, which means that a manager might have 4, 6, 7 people reporting to them. Um, as we delayer the organization and remove levels of the organization, with the same number of people in the organization, what happens is the span of control becomes wider, so that each manager has more people who are reporting to them. Now, this has many implications for the organization. Um, and this brings in the notion of decision making. So, decision making in tall organizations traditionally are centralized in the sense that the people at the top levels of the organization make the decisions and they pass the decisions down the chain of command. Uh, and so that the people in the trenches, shall we say, don't typically make many decisions on their own. As we cut out levels of the organization, and that includes levels of management, and most often includes levels of management in the organization. And excuse me. And as we broaden the span of control, that means that each manager uh, has to, and typically does, give up some of their own decision-making authority and passes it down in a kind of an empowering kind of way to the lower people in the organization. You can't make decisions that involve 13 or 15 or 20 people as well as you can when you only have 5 or 6 or 7 people reporting to you. So what tends to happen is that we begin to shift as organizations flatten out. We tend to shift from a centralized decision-making structure to a decentralized decision-making structure. Um, and in doing so, most organizations, as we've kind of talked about a little bit in the discussions, tend to find that that is very helpful to them when it comes to things like customer service. So, so when a customer calls into to lower in the organization and has a complaint or an issue or so forth, the person who is actually handling that customer, the one who probably knows them the best, now is given the authority to make more decisions on the spot instead of having to run it up the organization and back down the organization or go to their direct manager who doesn't have the bandwidth in order to be able to answer all the questions of the now enlarged number of people who he has working for him. So tall organizations see this decentralized decision making disappear as they delayer themselves. So now we need to talk a little bit. So we now talk about organizational structure and decision making and so forth. Now culture enters into the arena is that some organizations find it a lot easier to delayer themselves than others do, largely because of what their organizational structure, culture, excuse me, has been. Now let's move on to one of my favorite topics, besides organizational structure, which I'm a big fan of understanding that. Let's move on to motivational theories, which is what you're doing a lot of reading about currently. Motivational theories are extremely important for local management. I mean, the people who are actually hands-on managers. As you go through these theories and you review them, and I'm going to be posting soon a document about motivation theories, which kinds of summarizes the theories for you a little bit. But back to my point. Let's think a little bit about the organizational structure and how it interacts with motivation. Um, some of these motivational theories that you're going to be reading about, there's an implied message, and that is that people are more highly motivated when they tend to have the autonomy and the responsibility that comes with decision making. So whether or not it's an intended uh, advantage when an organization delays, actually most companies delay to save salaries, and when they cut out many levels of management, they actually end up cutting a lot of money out of their overhead budget, which is a good thing for profitability, obviously. So now we have a delayed organization. And so with that wider span of control, each individual gets to make more decisions, which tends to increase their motivational feelings, their job satisfaction feelings, which has implications on the organizational commitment, as we kind of have come to learn in this course. So that's a very interesting phenomenon to me, and one that deserves some thought on your part. Now, while we haven't talked about personality yet and individual differences yet, and this course does not touch on that too much, there are some observations that I'd like to make to put into this mix of structure and motivation. There are some people who relish the decision making and the autonomy more than other people, based on their personality type. There's also another phenomenon that I have noticed in my 40 some years of kicking around academia and Fortune 500 companies. Is that sometimes younger people, people directly out of college or graduate schools, tend to want to go into an organization which is taller, with more direct supervision. They feel a little bit more comfortable with that, at least in the short term. It's also my experience that when people get older and more experienced and feel more confident in themselves, they tend not to want to have their shoulder looked over as much. And so the delayed type of organization, uh, which gives them more empowered responsibilities, they tend to like better and have more job satisfaction. So I want each of you to think about that a little bit too, because personality and individual differences also play a role in this. I think that's about all I want to say. Just always remember that one of the fascinating things about organizational behavior is, even though almost every textbook I know of handles this, chapter by chapter. Chapter 1 is personality. Chapter 2 is working in teams. Chapter 3 is structure. Chapter 4 is culture. Chapter 5 is national culture. So on and so forth. They all operate and bang off of each other. They are interrelated. You can't get away from it. When you go to work on a daily basis, it's not just one of these topics you're dealing with. You're talking about the integration of all topics, which I think is what makes this feel interesting, fascinating, and difficult sometimes to totally get a handle on. I hope you're enjoying this class. You guys are doing pretty well overall. I'm very, very happy overall. And you have a great day. And I'll talk to you one or two more times on video before the course is over. Thank you. Bye-bye.